I think I'm hoping that there's a lot of lessons learned about what has to change in the SNP, even just in terms of organisation. I think that's. I think it's very telling looking back over like the last 5-6 years that pretty much all of the SNP's woes have been self-inflicted to an extent, and I think that's. If the only reason that this, or the only way that this can actually be worth something is if we learn from it, and that's what I'm hoping that we will see.
What do you mean? What I would be surprised if you remember this, but there is an analysis of that suggests that actually going so hard on the trans debate was a mistake, then the environmental issues really leaning on that was a mistake, and the party does best when it's not talking about independence. Do you agree with all that?
No, not even a little bit.
So what do you mean by self-inflicted wounds?
I think it's self-inflicted wounds in the extent that, so for a start, I think there was a lot of infighting that was spilling out into the public domain, and the reason that I think it spilled out into the public was because a lot of people had hit their limit because they felt like their voices weren't being listened to within the party, you know, or they felt there was no other avenue left for them to be able to express these things and for it to matter. So I think that was one aspect of it. I also think that, I mean, obviously there's the police investigation going on, but that in itself, I mean, at the time there were a lot of folk who weren't comfortable with the idea of the chief exec and the leader of the party basically being in a couple in the one house. So there's things like that where I think, we need to learn how to be a big party, because the other thing that folk often forget is when we had that big influx in Westminster, we became the third largest party in the UK. The SNP had been a small, almost rebellious party in Scotland that suddenly hit the big time.
But it's also politically a massively broad church. There's one central totem of independence, but there's creatures of the left, the right, the centre in that party. You're very much, I think, a creature of the left.
Yes, absolutely.
The current leadership, are you happy with that leadership in the party at the moment?
I mean, no, I made my thoughts and feelings well known about it when Kate did the interview that she did, and I think
which interview?
The one where she was saying she wouldn't vote for gay marriage or doesn't support couples who aren't married having kids or something to that effect. I think where the SNP, the reason I think the SNP have had the success that we've had is because we've lent to the left, socially and economically. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot further left that we could go on a few things, but on the whole, the SNP was the most realistic option for having a left-wing-ish government. And I think that if the party starts losing that, then they'll very quickly lose a lot of the love and support that they've managed to garner from not just young people, but also a lot of folk who are politically disenfranchised, you know.
You got tanking at the last election, and the polls suggest you've pulled it right back, and there's the common analysis is that that's down to the leadership of Swinney and Forbes that's much more popular.
Aye. What are you asking me, sorry?
Well, your analysis is actually we'd do much better if we were a party of the left, and I'm suggesting to you that the polls tell a different story completely.
No, I wouldn't say so, because I think, I mean, like you touched on it with the trans debate, and I wouldn't call it a debate. It's not a debate, it's a discussion. Okay. But I think the reason that there's culture wars happening across the West just now, right? And I think it's bad actors that are deliberately pushing these narratives and pushing this disinformation. And unfortunately, the SNP is one of many parties who haven't responded adequately to that. Even amongst its own membership, haven't responded adequately to that. But the reason why folk are that things like culture wars are being blamed for a lack of support for the party, it's because it allows folk to say things like, I can't afford to pay my bills, I can't afford this, and you're talking about, you know, whatever, trees or something. And that's a very easy narrative to spin. It doesn't make it true, though. And I think what we have seen definitely for Swinney has been a push in making sure people know that actually the priority of the Scottish Government is to help folk pay their bills, is to try and drive up standards of living and all the rest of it. And also they've not moved socially to the right, because for all Kate Forbes has her beliefs, those beliefs haven't become party policy at all. And I think if they did become party policy, then you would see a big mass exodus.
So just to be